and is an eternal associate of Krishna, he turns to Krishna and asks for guidance. So this is what we always have to be prepared to do in every situation in our life. And we will face very difficult situations in the future, that we turn to others for guidance. We turn to advanced souls for guidance, our mentors, our spiritual master, other senior devotees. We ask them, please can you help me? What shall I do in this situation? Because somebody with a clear head, who's not entangled in the emotional attachments of those relationships, can give you an intelligent course of action to take, what you yourself cannot see because your intelligence is clouded. It's like when a man is attracted to a woman. Now, it doesn't matter how many people, his parents, his friends will tell him, don't do it, man, she's going to ruin your life. No, don't do it, she's crazy. No, I heard that she did this before when she was younger, and her character, because of the emotional attachment that is already developed for that girl, he can't hear it. He just can't hear that good advice. And so he just stays with her, gets married, has a couple of kids, and then it turns into an absolute nightmare and break up. And then of course he should have listened. Then he realizes, oh, I should have listened to you, you know. So that's the point. We have to be humble enough and sincere enough to listen, to hear from people who are not entangled in that emotional complexity of your family dealings, and they can give you good advice. So that's why the Brahmana is always detached. The Brahmanas would operate as the mentors of society, and you go to them for advice because they couldn't care less about your family situation. They have no interest in your ding dongs and quibbles and so forth, and therefore they can give you impartial advice based upon scripture for your own benefit, even though it may taste like poison when you hear it, because it will definitely not help your illusory sentimental relationship, perhaps, but it will actually be for the best. So therefore we have to be humble enough to follow that authority, and not just follow our own authority all the time. Does that make sense? So when the Dayal Das tells, hang on a second, remember we all agreed to clean Prema Lounge every day, and you haven't done it for a week, and you've been saying you'll do it for the last 3 days to my face, and you still haven't done it? What's going on with you, bro? And it may seem a bit heavy or harsh, but it's actually for your own benefit. If you don't learn how to grow up and take responsibility, then you're going to suffer like anything in the material world. So in the nicest possible way, can you just do your duty and clean the bathroom, please? So that advice has to come. It's a thankless task. Actually, the person has to be the one to do that. But for our own benefit, we have to listen. We have to be humble enough to hear and to apply it. So that's what's going on here. Arjuna's humble enough, even though he's the the rider of the chariot, and Krishna's the charioteer, but he accepts Krishna as his guru. You are my guru. Please instruct me. Tell me what to do. I don't know what to do. Tell me, how can I overcome these problems? So Krishna goes straight for the jugular and just tells him straight away, Atma Tattva, you're not the body, you're the soul. You know, don't succumb to all of this illusion. All this emotion is completely different from who you are. Your constitutional position as eternal servant of God. Come up to this level of realization. See, that's real preaching. Just tell them the absolute truth. And then based upon their response, then you understand, okay then I need to come more into their way of thinking. So he comes down, okay, he can't handle that because Arjuna's lamentation is not dispelled by Atma Tattva. His intelligence is still bewildered by the emotion of having to fight with his own family. Therefore Krishna has to come at it from a different angle. So therefore he brings in this principle of selfless work or duty, and that through this dutiful work without attachment to the result, you will realize the soul, you will realize yourself and your relationship with God. So in that way he's attacking it from the perspective of karma, activity, because remember we're always attached to a certain kind of work. So therefore, if you encourage, the person can't just like operate on the liberated platform, then you encourage them to keep doing what they should do. This is what you're doing, okay, keep doing that, but now don't do it for yourself, do it for a higher cause, at least do it out of duty, because it's what you're supposed to do. But don't be attached to the fruits. In this way, you'll become liberated and all your anxieties and stresses will go away. You will still get the results of your work, but you'll also get liberation. So he comes at it from a different angle now. And then at the end of the second chapter, Krishna is describing the characteristic of what a self-realized person looks like, so that there's a prayojana, there's a goal that Arjuna can understand. Actually, I can get this result if I perform my duty. So he's more inspired to take up his bow and arrow and start cutting off heads, which he does better than anyone else. I mean, he's really good.
You've got a head off with an arrow.
Very easily, yeah. Yeah. He can cut off like hundreds of heads with one arrow. Without any problem. It's quite standard to lop off somebody's head, especially from distance. Because you would infuse the bow with a mantra, the arrow with a mantra. So it would fire with explosive force. And the head, there are different heads for the arrows, for different purposes, to pierce armor, or to destroy a chariot, or to lop off someone's head, whatever it was, to destroy someone's bow. There was a different type of arrow they would use. So the head lopper one would obviously be a bit broader than your average little armor piercing one, like that. And so we just kind of come in and, that's it, Man's a goner. Running around like a headless chicken. That happens apparently. When you chop off the person's head very quickly in the battlefield, they still run around for a bit.
You were telling me about this
Sikh, yeah. Had his head chopped off, he picked up his head, looking through the eyes kept on fighting. But he was like a yogi, like some kind of mystic. He was able to do that. There are stories even in Europe of when the guillotine was very popular and a lot of people were getting killed, having their heads chopped off. That sometimes there'll be a holy man would be praying, and his head would fall off, and then he'd continue saying the prayer and finish the prayer with his head separated from his body. There were stories of things like that happening.
It makes sense, no? According to the philosophy. I mean, if the soul hasn't left the body still function. Even if it's separate.
Yeah, because the subtle body, you can't cut
there.
the subtle body,
Yeah.
so that would still connect. So as long as your desire is strong enough, you can overcome physical limitations, and that's what you see when, for example, there's so many cases of, the man's like house is burning down, and suddenly he develops, just a normal guy, develops superhuman strength, is able to lift up concrete pillars and pieces of wood to rescue his family members. It's like, it's impossible, but somehow he did it. There's many stories like that, because that desire is so strong that the physical limitations no longer are limitations.
My brother saved my life once like that. I remember I was on holiday, I was like 4 years old or something. I remember very vividly, and he was like 5 or 6. I fell into the pool, I was trying to get some goggles. I was drowning, I was panicked straight away, and I was like, help me. I remember like that, and I put my hand up, and he just picked me, it was like 6 years old, picked me up with one arm like that. I was looking, it was like, and he just put me down. And when came out, what happened? He was like, no. I only died. I remember that vividly, picked me up with one arm.
What pool?
6 years, it was like a holiday, like in Spain or something.
Your younger brother?
No, older brother. Yeah.
So you couldn't
No,
swim?
well, I was panicked. I was panicking at you're a kid, you're like, oh, I died, you know what I mean? and then
So you would have died?
Yeah, I would have died, And he just saw my hand.
You wouldn't normally be able to do that.
No, not at all. I was 6 years old,
Wow.
Like,
That's crazy.
yeah, it's crazy.
Amazing. Wow.
Beautiful story.
Yeah. So it's quite common, yeah. Those kinds of stories are quite common.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that. So that, yeah, like that. Okay, yeah, so that's that. And then in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, Arjuna is confused because he misunderstood that acquiring transcendental knowledge is incompatible with work. So remember, this confusion it goes through the whole of the Bhagavad Gita. It's kind of just going backwards and forwards, at least for the first 6 chapters. This confusion of Arjuna. Okay, you keep emphasizing knowledge. You keep emphasizing knowledge and realize knowledge, but at the same time you're telling me to work. So what do you want me to do? Do you want me to study and become a renunciant, or do you want me to be active and follow my duty? What do you want me to do, Krishna? I'm confused. And he keeps asking this question because Krishna's emphasizing you should do both at the same time. You should use knowledge in your activity, and through your activity you'll get knowledge. And by combining the two, that's Buddha Yoga. But Arjuna's just not catching it. As many people who read Bhagavad Gita don't catch it. They just don't catch this point. So that's why it's repeated several times. That we have to be very wise in our activity. Don't just work out of passion and emotion, and but we should be fully conscious of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, the way in which we're doing it, the mood in which we're doing it, and what the result will be, and that we're not attached to it. And so if we're fully conscious like that when we do our activities, and that's a liberated platform. And then from that, it's just one small step to pure devotional service. You just add Krishna to it. Then I do all this, but I do it for Krishna. Right? So Buddha Yoga is bringing us to that level. It's a yoga of intelligence. Because that's another thing which is confusing to Arjuna. You keep Buddha Yoga, Buddha Yoga. The yoga means the yoga of intelligence. So that means study. That means detachment and not performing my duties. It means becoming an intellectual. But then the next sentence, Krishna's saying, so stand up and fight and do your duty. It's like, what's going on? What do you want me to do? The pen is mightier than the sword, or the sword is mightier than the pen. Make your mind up, kind of thing. And so it's like, no, you do both simultaneously. So Arjuna is confused because he misunderstood that acquiring transcendental knowledge is incompatible with work. To eradicate this mistake, because we understand that the transcendentalist is this very grave yogi with a big beard, very serious face and very scary eyes, and he's sitting there and he's meditating and he's not eating any food and he's having very cold baths and he's not talking to anyone. Yeah, I'm very, very advanced spiritually, I have my special bhavas and no one understands how I feel, and you just don't understand my realizations. Yeah. So this is people think of that's a spiritually advanced person. It's not a spiritually advanced person. A spiritually advanced person is very active because they've understood that the spiritual world is full of activity and that the soul is active, and therefore it's natural for me to be active, but not doing it for myself, doing it for the Supreme Person. That's a spiritually advanced person. Srila Prabhupada was a spiritually advanced person. He's Guru Maharaj. These are very active people. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We also have the Babajis in our line, but they didn't just sit around. They sat around chanting all day. But they were chanting to purify the world so that the next Acharya could appear. It's like Guru Kashoda's Babaji was purifying the whole universe just by his chanting. That was his function, was to come purify the universe so Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati could come in and start off the Lord Chaitanya's movement in earnest. That was his purpose. So you have those kind of personalities, but in the spiritual world, in their meditation, they're so active. They're busy running around doing so many things, and as an avadut that comes out, it seems like madness because your consciousness is there, but your body is here. And so your body doesn't correspond to your environment. And so people just think you're crazy. But he's not. He's the most sane one around. Yeah. So activity with knowledge is important. Yeah. Otherwise you become a stone-hearted yogi and become proud. You start to think you're better than everyone else. Start to think you're God. You become attached to the mystic power you've developed. And it's just a matter of time before you become distracted again back to the mundane, which they all do. They get into politics, they get into Ayurveda, they get into, giving funny talks,
YouTube.
they get into something.
YouTube.
Yeah, they become celebrities, do parachute jumps from helicopters like Sadhguru and things like that.
Do that. I did that. I did do that.
So it's like, these are supposed to be the advanced ones, but they're attached to sense gratification because they haven't developed that strong attachment to Krishna. It's like this personality in Jaiva Dharma, he's a very advanced Mayavadi, and he was always told that the bliss of Brahmananda is so amazing, so wonderful, so much far beyond anything you can experience. So he studied, practiced for so long, became advanced, achieved Brahman realization, and then realized it's not what they said it was. That it's not the highest pleasure, because why am I still being attracted to the mundane world? So he comes to Prem Das Babaji and he explains about what real spiritual happiness is, and that the bliss of Brahmananda is like a tiny portion of a drop of the shoreless, unlimited ocean of bhakti. And then once he got a taste for that, the holy name and so forth, his interest changed. But because he'd made that advancement to the liberated platform, it was very quick for him to come to experience symptoms of bhava very quickly, because he didn't have that material attachment. Yeah. So that's why Naishkamya is such a good position to be in. By performing dutiful work without attachment to the result, it's a very fertile bed. You just have to add Krishna to it and you're already liberated. You just start then to have a direct experience of what love of God is, because you don't have that emotional, sentimental attachment to the result in your situation. So Naishkamya is very important, because people are addicted to work, they're addicted to their activities, they're addicted to the results. So just keep doing the same work, just keep doing the same activity, but just give up the result. And when they do that, they realize that, okay, then I'm giving up the result, but I'm still fine. I'm still living, in fact I'm even happier than I was before, because my attachment to the result was actually the cause of my misery. But then they start to become subtly aware of the fact they're attached to the activity itself. It's the process of getting the goal. I'm also addicted to it. And so by doing it over and over again, but not being attached, you slowly also become liberated from that. And then you're just doing your work in a dutiful way, according to your scripture, according to your social position, without attachment to the result. And then that stimulates what is called the aparoksha emotion, which is basically understanding that the real rasa between two people can only take place in a selfless environment, where both of you are just doing your duty without expectation of reward, but you're doing it as best you can because it's the proper thing to do. By doing that together, you experience real relationship. Does that make sense?
What's aparoksha?
Aparoksha. So that's the experience of interacting on that platform of selfless work or duty, and basically dharma. Like Yudhisthira, he always followed his dharma, always followed duty, even if it was against his personal interest. Like when, like so many different situations, but they went to fight Maharaj Drupad, because Drona's Guru Dakshin was, okay, now you have to go and conquer the kingdom of Drupad because he offended me when I was younger and he wouldn't give me any milk, so now I'm going to come and take him down. So you guys, you go and do that. So they go and do that. And of course Duryodhana, being very, very proud, he went in first with his 99 brothers, and they messed it up, and they all got captured. And so then the Pandavas, 5 of them, had to go in and rescue them and bring Drupad before Drona, and because of their heroism, they were clearly the heirs to the throne of Hastinapur. Yudhisthira should therefore be crowned king. Duryodhana's not a competent leader. But because Dhritarashtra, when they got back, Dhritarashtra was so attached to his son, because emotional attachment to your family members bewilders your intelligence and you can't do the right thing. So therefore he couldn't give Yudhisthira the crown, even though he knew it was the right thing to do. But Yudhisthira accepted his decision because he was the king, and agreed to all of the humiliation and everything because he's the king. And my duty is to follow the king's instruction and do whatever he says. And he always followed his duty. And because of that, his relationships were amazing. Because who doesn't love a person who always does his duty? And is always compassionate, always caring, selfless, willing to make sacrifice for others. Who doesn't love that person? That's how you develop real relationships.
What's someone's motivation behind, say, forming Naishkarmya if they're not aware of the results to Krishna?
Because you have faith. Even if you may not have love for Krishna as a person, you still have faith in the Vedic scriptures. That they're perfect, that they're pure, that by following these, because there's a slight tinge of selfishness, that this will give me the best result in the end. Because Dharma always gives you the best. It gives you liberation, or at least takes you to the heavenly planets, minimum. Like that, you'll always be remembered in history as that hero who was always following Dharma. So there's these subtle kind of material attachments even in Dharma, because it's passion and ignorance. There's still some passion there. Sorry, not passion and ignorance, passion and goodness. So although if you're doing it correctly, it can be it's in goodness, but if there's always that element of passion, it's not pure goodness. Like that. But you have deep faith in the scripture, so you understand there is a God. You understand God is there, and you understand if I don't follow the scriptures properly, then there's a danger of me incurring sin. So therefore I follow them perfectly and do my duty and always be a good boy and do the right things and so forth. But it's not because I love God, it's because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't. So that's Dharma. I'm very pious, So you go give charity to the deity because it's the right thing to do, and like that. But the fear, if you do it properly, by continuous practice, that fear goes away. You just get a taste for doing your duty and understanding it's the superior form of interaction between human beings. So that's a doctrine. That's aparoksha. You have pratyaksha, paroksha, aparoksha, a doktaja, and a prakrita. So these 5 different types of experience correspond to the 5 levels of consciousness. So pratyaksha, just gross sense, sensual awareness, right? Pratyaksha, sense perception. So that corresponds to anamoy, right? It just corresponds to the Shudra. And then above that is paroksha. So that's pranamoy. So that's you're perceiving through your own senses, but you're also utilizing the senses of others to understand what's going on. That level of experience. So you listen to the news, you listen to your gossips or your friends, and you listen to your mom, and that kind of stuff. So that's paroksha. And then above that is aparoksha. So that's a different kind. That's experiential, where you're not relying upon your senses or the senses of others. You're actually in tune with the emotional content of the experience of working together selflessly. It's a much higher level of rasa. Technically that's where human life begins. Dharma. And then higher than that is a doktaja. That's when it becomes spiritual, and Krishna enters into it, and you're discerning what is spirit, what is matter, and you're operating on that liberated platform. So that's the bliss of Brahmananda. And then the highest is a prakritya, which is transcendental. So that's in a direct relationship with Krishna. So these different levels of experience are there. So Krishna, first of all, he goes for that Atma Tattva. He explains, first of all, go for the liberated platform. Understand you're not the soul. So you're the soul, you're not the body. Understand things in this way. Arjuna can't come up to that level. So there's then he goes down to Dharma. Then at least do your duty. Do it selflessly. That way you will achieve happiness. And by the end of Bhagavad Gita, he comes back to the spiritual and finishes with the transcendental. Just do it for me. Surrender to me. So he brings it to the aprakritya stage by the end. Because you just got to deal with the person where they are psychologically. It's the best preaching guide, actually, there is, Bhagavad Gita, how to deal with a person's emotional attachments and give them the absolute truth. So you just have to learn how to shift between these different levels of consciousness, analyzing where the person is. Try to give them the highest thing first, just in case they're actually qualified to take it, because you just don't know. But then if you see where they are, okay, then try one of these other ones. Try Dharma. If that doesn't work, okay, then give them some kind of humanitarian arguments. If that doesn't work, just take prasadam, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? You just got to figure it out. And everyone's individual. So you got to find that person's individual interest and then try to bring them up. But you have to try to bring them up. Gradually, not too fast, but not too slowly also. Because if you try to bring them up too fast, that can also be a problem. And that's how you create Naradharmas, the lowest of mankind. Which I've created many of, by the way. Naradharma.
Yes.
So this offense to the holy name, never preach the holy name to a faithless person. Is it the 9th offense? Yeah, so that's in relation to this, because you have the 4 kinds of sinful people that never surrender to Krishna. The muta, was it? Natat, was it? Prapajate, Prapajate Naradama. Muta, Prapajate Naradama, Mayaya Pritikyana, Asuram Bhavam Ashrita. So these 4 types of people that never surrender. Everything okay? So you have the ass. The ass which is just stupid and just works hard and has sex and eats. You know, that's the mudha. He's innocent. So that's the person you preach to. You just give them the holy name and just see where they are, because you never know, they could just wake up. Okay, and so you preach to them, but you try to bring them up to the level of God consciousness. But the problem is, if you do it in such a way that they decide to reject it, that means you've created a Naradharma. So Naradharma is the lowest of mankind. It means they've understood what Krishna consciousness is and consciously reject it. And either stick to sense gratification or think that some other system is better. You know, so that's called a Naradharma. You've been given the highest thing and they've turned it away. Sometimes that can be the fault of the preacher, by not being sensitive enough to the individual. You know, and so they don't develop the faith that's required to take it to the next level. You know, you freak them out. You frighten them. But also, if they're not going to accept it, don't give them the intimate details. You don't tell them about Chaitanya Leela too much. You know, you don't tell them about all the ecstatic symptoms and all the bhavas. This stuff you don't tell them, because they're not ready for it. You just tell them what they need to know. When you see the faith has developed, the sincerity, then you give them more. Because the danger is, if you give them more, they start to think it's cheap, it's sentimental, and then they just don't take it seriously. You've created a Naradharma. So that's the problem. So they have to want to come back and know more. So the juicy cliffhanger, the juicy dangler, always has to be there. Next time we will discuss this. So they always feel there's more to know. So that's a great art. The preacher has to learn how to do that. But if you go straight for the rasa and the highest thing, and you don't have to follow the rules, and which people do to get them in the door, but you create a lot of sentimental devotees, and you create a lot of Naradharmas as well. Everything has to be grounded in philosophy. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be the other way as well. Like you preach too low, but the person is already
Yeah, exactly. So if you preach too low, they'll also just walk away, thinking that it's something cheap, mundane, it's not very advanced. I already know this stuff. And so they'll just walk away. That's the danger. That's why it's recommended to give them the topmost first and see how they respond, Because then you can always just stop talking about that and come to the other things that they're more comfortable with. But if you don't try, then you'll never know. We're just, no, don't tell them too much. No, but if you see that they're responding not very good, then just come immediately back down. And they won't even notice, they'll forget it like immediately. It's like that. It's like we're in a conversation with somebody and then suddenly it gets a bit uncomfortable for you. You just change the subject. You do it all the time, right? Especially as when you're a kid. You become very expert at it, you know. Or I'm going to get into trouble. Like, oh no, if she asked me this, you know, I didn't clean the bathroom or something, you know. So your mum starts talking about cleaning. Oh no, the bathroom's going to come up and I didn't clean. So you change the subject. You start talking about something that she wants to talk about, right? So in that way you can divert their attention. So preaching can be like that also. If you see they're becoming disturbed, just talk about something else. And naturally the conversation will flow. Like that. Doesn't do like that. You do it on book distribution all the time, right? That's how you sell books, you know. You got to be expert at doing that. So
there's one story I heard from Nirada?
Navina Nirada.
Navin Nirada. Swiss.
Okay.
And he was distributing books. And he say yoga, meditation, everything, present the Bhagavad Gita. And the guy look at him like this and he said, I don't want a book about this. And so he said, oh, what you looking for? And he said, I want to know God, I want to have a relationship with God, I want to love God. I said, oh, okay, not this book then, this book. You know, so that's why I was saying this, that sometimes, you know, we don't know the people. So we need to ask them also, what do they want? Because if we don't ask them, then we're never gonna know where they are about. That's why we need to ask questions as well, not just like do only affirmation and this is this, you know, this book is about this and then this is so this is this and all the people that are just taking but they can't respond or relate or answer. You know? If you ask them some little question like this, you can know. So then it's more easy.
Very nice. Good point.
Excellent point there.
But still, that was my question. But prashad,
You can't go wrong.
these they work at all 5 levels.
Of course.
They
still work. Even the most liberated souls will still enjoy these things because they're eternal.
The Muda.
Yeah, of course. Especially the Muda. You just feed him up to the eyeballs. That's basically the only language he understands anyway. So at least there's an opportunity, and then, you know, if at some point in their lives they start to become sincere, you know, because they've had that taste, it's quite likely they'll come back here. So you can't do much more with the Muda than that, because you just got to try, you know, try your best. And the thing is, a Muda is more easier. Remember, these 4 never surrender to Krishna, you know, these 4. So to get a Muda to surrender to Krishna is tough work. It's better to go for the 4 pious people that do surrender to Krishna, the desperate or the distressed, right? The seeker of wealth, the inquisitive, and the genuine seeker of the absolute truth. So these 4 people, that should be our capture area. We should, in whatever preaching programs we're in or whoever we meet, we should see if they fit into those, and if they do, we should put extra effort to try to talk to them, because their window is open. And if you miss that window, who knows how many more lifetimes will go by before they have the opportunity again.
Why would the Muda end up in a preaching program? For example?
Pizza.
I heard that there's free pizza, yeah. Like one of his friends is coming, he thought he'd got nothing else to do, might as well come along. You always get, you know, a few Mudas. They're innocent, but they're just not very intelligent.
He's also under distress, no?
Everybody's under distress, but it's only when your distress has come to a certain level that it's unbearable, then you actually become sincere. And you realize, actually, I've got to become a better person, because my life is horrible, right? And then that's the window. And there are plenty of people out there who've come to that realization. And they try to be a good person for a certain amount of time. Maybe they last for a year or 2, but then gradually, because of association, they go back to how they were before. Because that's the material. Unless you come to Krishna consciousness, you just go back to the modes. You know, so unless they take up some spiritual process, then there's no other opportunity. You just, because of your association, you don't come into higher association, you just go back. You know.
Eden, you got a question. Should I answer?
Eden has a question.
Should
Well, that's a special devotee. And therefore,
you did not?
yeah, we don't normally answer questions, but since
Yeah, that's
Eden is so sincere, I think we should
so
take
he
his
said,
question.
My understanding is that the Vedas were written when society was better defined by Varnashram. Today's society has more mixed responsibilities. How then do we best approach Dharma?
He's very intelligent, huh?
Very intelligent. Very intelligent.
Should I say again?
Hmm?
Should I say again?
No? Yeah. So the question is about, like, so today's society is more complicated, more sophisticated, there's more different dharmas and so forth. So how can we follow this Varnashram? It was written at a time when things were more straightforward and so on and so forth. Well, it's a little bit speculative because we have to remember the Veda is eternal. It's not that it was just written 5,000 years ago and it didn't exist before that. It's always existed. It was just 5,000 years ago it was split into 4. Before that it was just 1. Remember, Vedavyas came, split it into 4, and then he elaborated in the Upanishads and Puranas. But actually that body of knowledge always existed. And we know that because, well, there's many ways we know that. I mean, all the pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam are from different yugas. Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga. Some of them are even from different kalpas. But they still talk about the Vedas in every single one of them. Because the Veda is an eternal principle. Veda just means knowledge. How to live in this material existence. And everybody and every planetary system within the material universe and every material universe has access to this knowledge because it's the first thing that was spoken to Lord Brahma from within his heart, the first created living being. So it's always been there. And just that knowledge has been disseminated throughout the universe since the beginning of time. It was put down on paper because people's memories had become so bad with the onset of the age of Kali that things had to be written down. Before that there was no need to write anything down. People could remember everything just hearing it once. And so you go to Gurukul and you would learn all the scriptures just by hearing from your Guru. You just hear it once and it was that was it. You still have people who can do that today, but they're the minority now. It used to be everybody like that, the majority. So anyhow, the rules of Dharma are universal principles. Society today still acts according to those rules. We just don't see it. We're not identifying it scientifically. But even in our society, we still differentiate the businessman from the teacher and the intellectual. We make that distinction between the worker. We have blue-collar worker, white-collar worker. You know, we have these different kinds of distinctions even in our society. We understand there are different types of workers. So the system of Varnashram is just simply the most scientific, most accurate, because it's given by Krishna, way to understand society. And you can either use that system and analyze everything scientifically, or we can just speculate and try to understand it from that ascending process. Yeah, but because we're mixed with the modes, we're always going to get it wrong. That's the point. So it's very easy to apply Dharma in our lives. Human beings are not more complicated now than they ever have been. We're more confused and we're more stupid, but people were just as intelligent and as active and as imaginative 5,000 years ago as they are now. In fact, they were more so. We've become more simple actually now. Life has become very limited. But because with the rise of technology it seems more sophisticated and so forth. But culture, where's our culture gone? The culture has become food of a vulture. There's just nothing. It's just a dead body of what real culture should be. So that is sophisticated. So a very sophisticated, cultured person from 5,000 years ago, you know, nobody could stand next to such a person these days, practically. Just maybe a few very cultured brahmanas from India, South India or something today, are kind of on that level, maybe. No? So those nuances. So people were actually much more sophisticated back then than they are now. And a lot of it has been lost. So to think, we always have the opinion that the West, we're so advanced, we're so, everything is so modern, so new, it's so much better than it was before, and things now are different. It's complete nonsense. Things are exactly the same. The psychology of human being hasn't changed. The modes of nature are still there. There's only a limited number of combinations. People have always had the same ideas, the same philosophies. Everything, you can draw it back to the original Vedic understanding of the world. It's like atheism, materialism, Darwinism. You can find it there in Indian philosophy. It's there. They already had it completely discussed and understood. They call the Charvakas. It's a system of belief that was there before, around the time of Buddha. That was a long time ago. It was very prominent in India at that time. Of course, it existed long before that. These are eternal, bogus philosophical systems. They're eternal. Every Kali Yuga, it's the same stuff that happens. Every Kali Yuga, the same things, the same problems. Maybe the names are a bit different. Instead of McDonald's, it's called MacDougall's or something. And instead of an iPad, it's called a FlyPad, or there'll be. But basically, the same things happen. There's nothing new under the sun. It's the same stuff. So Krishna has given this system of Varnashram specifically for Kali Yuga in the Bhagavad Gita. Remember, the Srimad Bhagavatam, all these scriptures are written for the Kali Yugites, for us, specifically, the target audience. So everything discussed in there is very practical and applicable for the modern age, and we just have to learn how to apply it. But just because we don't understand it, that's why we think it doesn't fit. But the reality, it does fit perfectly. We just have to come to that level of understanding. And if we can actually become real advisors to the rest of the world on how to live a happy human life in harmony with everybody else, with the planet, with all species of life. We can give that advice because we have that understanding. And that's why we have to study Bhagavad Gita very subtly, very minutely, in great detail, though it seems like it's taking a long time. But if we don't go into this level of analyzation, then we won't catch all these points. How practical it is. It's super practical. It's the best self-help book. It's the original psychology book. Everything is contained within it. Does that make sense? Bhagavad Gita, it's the best. And don't forget, this is just the foundation. This is foundational. This is the graduate. And you've got to go to, so this is the undergraduate study. So we've got to get to the graduate, which is the Bhagavatam, and then the postgraduate is the CC. So this is just the beginning. If we don't catch these fundamental points, then the other books, they won't make much sense to us. They make some sense, we'll get something from it, but the full benefit won't be there. Yeah. Don't forget, Srila Prabhupada followed scripture exactly, perfectly. He couldn't say anything against scripture. It's impossible. An eternally liberated soul. He always acted according to these principles, and he always advised everybody to follow these principles, and you saw the success. Because just applying it properly, everything works out. He was the expert businessman, he was the expert Brahmin, he was the expert military leader, he was the expert servant. He could operate on all those platforms. He always did the Dharma exactly according to the time, place and situation. So it's just a matter of understanding where and when to apply this. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good. Thank you for your question. That was wonderful, Eden. Very, very nice. Thank you very much. I hope your mother's feeling better now, and we look forward to seeing you after this lockdown is ever going to be over. We look forward to having you back with us again. Oh, Haribol. So, in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, oh God, we haven't even finished 2 paragraphs. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm really sorry.
Well, this is the best way to do it, actually. Very slowly, it's the best.
Well, this is the summary, so I suppose you're kind of picking up on all the what's been happening. Sure. We discussed 2 chapters just then, so. In the beginning of the 3rd chapter, Arjuna is confused because he misunderstood that acquiring transcendental knowledge is incompatible with work. To eradicate this mistake, Krishna explains Naishkarmya, Buddhi Yoga, as work combined with knowledge. Such detached work is a sacrifice, and it is the means of attaining transcendental realization. But transcendental knowledge comes from sacrifice, because it gets bestowed upon you by Krishna within the heart when you deserve it. You can only deserve knowledge through sacrifice. So by doing selfless work, the Naishkarmya, that's a sacrifice, you get transcendental knowledge as a side benefit. Bang! Then you understand more deeply what's going on, then you apply that knowledge, and then you get more realizations. Finally, you surrender to Krishna completely. Such detached work is a sacrifice, and it is the means of attaining transcendental realization. It is performed even by great self-realized persons in order to set a good example for others. So even the eternally liberated souls, they continue their Naishkarmya, their seems like karmic activities. Like Prabhupada would say, it looks like when he was trying to print his Srimad Bhagavatam when he was still in Vrindavan. To the external observer, it seems like I'm just a businessman running backwards and forwards from Delhi, trying to get my book printed, selling copies of Back to Godhead to try to raise money. It looks like I'm just dealing business, but they don't understand that everything is on the transcendental platform, because I'm just simply following the order of my spiritual master. And they say a sannyasi shouldn't be doing such things, but they don't understand that this is real sannyas, that I'm doing this completely as an offering to Krishna with no interest in any benefit for myself. So that's the thing. That's how you get complete knowledge, complete realization. The Lord emphasizes that in order to perform Naishkarmya steadily, one should conquer lust and thus overcome material dualities. Because lust means attachment to the result. Therefore, by practicing Naishkarmya, Buddhi Yoga, without attachment to the result, lust goes away. Because lust only comes up when there's a need for it. If there's no need, if you're not going to use it, then it's not going to come up. So by acting on that platform, one can conquer lust. Okay, we'll finish there for today. Thank you very much. It was a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Prabhu. My knowledge is just seeding, and hence do not fully understand the history and also the nuances of Vanashram yet. We will continue to practice.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Back to Eden Prabhu ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki.
Jai.
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki.
Jai.
Jainatai Go Premanande.
Hare Hare.
Thank you very much.
Hare